Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. I am delighted to welcome a former member of the White House National Economic Council and a fellow at the Center on Global Energy Policy from Columbia, Aya Ibrahim. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Likewise. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we are in uncharted economic territory, to say the least. Let me start with the data side of things. Trump obviously has fired the messenger from the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Mhm.
How damaging is that? And what other sources of information can the markets and investors get if they doubt, frankly, that this information going forward is going to be reliable?
Right. Well, so much of what makes the United States a premier destination for foreign direct investment and why our capital markets are the way that they are and they are so liquid and they're so competitive and dynamic is because there are certain things that people know to be true, right? There is infrastructure, both on the information side, but also from the legal side as well. If a deal does not go the way that it's supposed to, or if some set of interest or equities are lost, like you have legal recourse. If you are considering putting your money here, there is a plethora of information and data that you can use to inform those decisions. And so to attack one of the things or one of the key things that makes the United States the place to do business to me seems so counterintuitive from the nominally very serious business people running this administration. But it's also just so damaging. And the thing with institutions and the thing with information, as you know better than most, is trust is very hard to earn and it is very easily lost. And so once you have injected doubts into the way that we go about collecting and analyzing information about the state of our economy, it's a very difficult genie to put back in the bottle.
Absolutely. One of the things that just happened the other day is Trump announced that the US government was going to get a 15% cut of the chip sales to China. Um, First of all, I don't know if that's ever been done. And what does that legally and economically do to our business around the world if the president is going to come in and kind of take a cut of it, which seems more like gangster behavior
Yeah.
than presidential behavior?
Yeah. I mean, it's not above board, I don't think. I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is that it is not legal, that our system does not allow for export taxes. Um, but as just a manner of practice, again, these are the kinds of things that are supposed to happen in other places and not here, right? The reason again to invest in the United States is because you do not have a leader that can decide to hold your exports hostage in exchange for some cut of the business. Um, the other thing is there is an inherent contradiction here. We imposed export controls on some of these high-end chips because we said that they pose a national security risk or the possibility of them getting to certain organizations around the world, let's say, would pose security risks. Now, this administration, this president has come in and said, well, sure, but the price is right. Like there is a price that you can pay, and suddenly these things don't matter as much. And so, as a general matter, there is the bigger question of what actually falls under the purview of national security risk. Did that umbrella actually get too big? And if not, what does it mean that we are willing to auction off technology and capabilities that we have determined are our risk?
Right. We have a tremendous benefit in the United States because the dollar is the so-called world reserve currency.
Mhm,
Deals are denominated in dollars, they trade in dollars, things are
mhm,
priced in dollars.
mhm,
But is the only thing that is holding that a belief in the stability of the United States? In other words, could countries decide, we're going to use a basket of currencies, or we're going to use,
Mm,
the yen, or we're going to use something else, which would greatly affect our
mhm,
economy, affect
mhm,
our borrowing costs, and a
mhm.
whole cascade of issues. Is that possible? We could lose that status?
So this is one of those perennial questions of, okay, does this spell the end for the dollar status as the global reserve currency? And this has been a question that has been raised multiple times over the last few decades. So, and that did not end up being the case. I do think that you're increasingly moving in the direction of a world in which you have multiple powers, right? And there will be a diversification of where people put their money. I think for the time being, I mean, the dollar is ubiquitous and it is the most liquid of all currencies. And so it does I'm not as worried necessarily in the short term. But again, all of this entire system that does include the dollar as the reserve currency is held together by trust. It is held together by a sense of certainty and stability. And all of that is thrown out the window when you have a president that makes policy by fiat in a way that completely undermines trust in that system. We have seen over the last few months folks moving money out of dollars and they're putting them in yens and they're putting them in or putting them in yen, they're putting them in, excuse me, gold, they're putting them in euros. And so people are hedging. That's not a good direction to be moving in. I think for now, people will continue to do most of their business in dollars, but I imagine that there are more people today thinking about what a post-dollar world looks like than there were before January 20th.
And that is just a stunning development, a stunning fall from power, and a stunning abrogation
Mhm,
of the advantages of being a superpower. I want to ask you, since you are at the Center for Global Energy Policy, about Trump's vendetta, is the only way to describe it, against
mhm,
green energy.
mhm,
It's not that he believes that we're not creating enough green energy. It's that
mhm,
he doesn't want it. And that seems peculiar. Is he
mhm.
acting as a protectionist for big oil and gas? Is there some other rationale? And aside from the energy and the climate, which is our big ifs, is there a technology problem if we cede this market to the Chinese, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't pretend to understand the rationale of the president on any given issue. What I'll
Fair.
say, what I'll say is this: we do not have a choice but to pursue a green energy transition. There just is not a world in which we continue in the way that we have with no significant change and think that the world is going to remain habitable for most of the people living on it. In fact, we have already seen instances where people are having to locate beyond migration, but there are entire islands that will have to be evacuated because of rising sea levels. We are already there in terms of, a climate emergency. We're also seeing it here in the United States, extreme weather events, which were more of a rarity. We're seeing them every hurricane seems to be more
Yes.
destructive than the one before, right? And these are hitting states across the South. So there's a lot of his voters, many of his voters, much of his base that's implicated, but also many communities that are least positioned to be able to adapt and to recover from extreme weather events and from the effects of climate change. On his personal feelings around clean energy, again, I won't I won't pretend to understand. It seems very cultural because economically it does not make a ton of sense to one after many years of investment in clean energy through the Inflation Reduction Act, but generally all of the crowding in of private capital as a result. You have real clean energy market here in the United States, and with it, all of the technological advancement and advantages that you get in trying to be a leader, in the space. But you need that mix of energy sources in order to keep energy prices, to keep electricity affordable. Um, and again, it also is in conflict with, I suppose, other goals, this administration's goals around AI and being a leader in AI. That's incredibly energy intensive endeavor. And so it's intellectually inconsistent. The only real explanation I can think of is that it is coded in a certain way. It's left coded or it's progressive coded, and we're just right. This entire administration, so much of it has centered around the culture wars, and woke and whatever. um, then there's also all of the odd comments about windmills. So this is maybe the developer in him coming out. He does not like the aesthetics of windmills, so or wind turbines, I should say. So maybe that is really where a lot of it's coming from. I don't know.
I, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question because
Mm-hmm.
it seems so bizarre to me.
Mm-hmm.
What is this talk about creating a nuclear power plant on the moon? Is that like a real thing? Is that like a bad joke?
I I have to. I saw the headline and I didn't read the article. Like at a certain point, there is but so much news that you can take in, and so on that day, that was not going to be the thing I was going to read. Uh,
That
I
is very fair, very fair.
um I there are some ambitious, I think, technological leaps that we should be going after. There are some serious investments we should be making here, both in our energy capacity, but also in enabling all of the technology that you would need to
Right.
do in order to bolster that capacity. So I'm sure you have kept up with a lot of news around critical minerals and rare earths, and that is an area where the Chinese really do dominate, and it is an area where we really need to invest and scale up. But it is very difficult to do because we are dealing with such a concentrated market. But again, a lot of the technology that they want to dominate in is contingent on us being able to get a handle on some of these inputs.
Right. So green energy, technological success,
Mhm.
international competitiveness, or a nuclear reactor on the moon. It seems pretty,
I
obviously we're going in the wrong direction. Thank you so much. You make it
Mhm.
so simple and so easy for non-economists to understand, and we really appreciate it. We'll be sure to have you back soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer.
Bye.